What's up, guys, and welcome to another HLTV fantasy video. It's gonna be a bit of a different one this time. I've been working on this for some hours today, and I felt like I got to a point where I do really want to share it with you guys and see what you guys think, if you have some great suggestions how to make this better without making it too complex. But, as the title of this video is gonna say, I wanted to make an Excel program that calculates the best potential HLTV fantasy lineup for me. And I'm gonna kind of go through this spreadsheet. First off, we have a team ID here, just to sort players into different teams. We have all of the player names who are available in fantasy. We have the cost for each player. This is pretty like normal stuff, right? Then we have the past 3 months ratings. I'm only using the past 3 months ratings, although of course, look, you could optimize this by having maybe a ratio of past 3 months, maybe some past 6 months, and it would make the spreadsheet more viable. There's a lot of things I could do, but I'm probably not gonna. It's gonna make it way too complex for me. But yeah, these are the ratings for the past 3 months, and then I've added some kind of adjustment to this rating based on how difficult the opposition is. So, for example, Carrigan may have a 0.91, but maybe he has expected rating of something a bit more against opponents that he's gonna play against, and this can kind of be manually adjusted. And this is just for the first game, which is based on matchups that I have here. We'll get back to that later, I think. But yeah, then we have some sort of expected points for each player. For one game, we have an adjustment that is different for a second game because the expected opponent is going to be different. So Carrigan's second opponent, for example, is expected to be more difficult than his first opponent. So he's going to have an expected rating that is lower. And then expected points reflect that as well. Let's actually, in this situation, go here. So I've actually added some bookie odds for the favorite in each matchup. I've also ordered these teams based on what I personally think is the strength of each team, because that I think is way more difficult to look at through just stats. But I think bookies have give a pretty good understanding of who is favored in each matchup. Then we have, based on this bookie odds, I have calculated the winning odds for each team. So face very high amount of the time we're gonna win, and this is also like reflected in the amount of points Carrigan would get, for example, because he's gonna get the 6 points for winning more often than the -3 from losing. Then there's 2 scenarios. Game 2, if you win or lose. And this becomes more difficult because I think it's very difficult to say what the actual winning probability for any team is in any scenario. But I have kind of made the decision, as you can see in these kinds of rules I've set for myself. After game 1, the favorites have a 60% chance to win and underdogs a 40%, which I think is somewhat fair. And, well, based on how likely the first match was to end in one way or another, this now calculates game 2 odds for winning, for if they won or lost, and then game 2 total odds of winning or losing, which in this case go quite linearly, like 60, 50, and 40, because I would say the favorites kind of just like the percentages just align that way when the favorites play in this kind of order. Then I've calculated padding probability, which is essentially chances to win first and second games, one after another, because in this format, if you win the first game matches, you go straight to the semis, and then you get padding points. There's an extra column here for no reason, and then I've added this kind of average extra points per player for padding. So I didn't want to include roles or boosters in this because it makes it infinitely more complex. But it is an important thing, I think, for padding points, which is why I wanted to add these extra points where we expect the total points from rolls and boosters to be around this much for players from each team, and this then calculated into the padding points. So then we have here pre-padding points, which is total points from game 1 and 2, or expected points. And we have the added padding points if they get padding, and then padding odds is just like the padding points, which are listed here, times the odds for padding. So you can see there's some players who have really good expected padding points, and then there's teams who have not that many expected padding points. What I could actually do, now that I look at it, is say that negative padding points are never... No, wait, negative padding points can happen. Okay, so never mind. It's okay. Then we have the total points, which is just padding odds plus pre-padding. And this is like the total expected points that you get based on these calculations. And then this is, I guess, the important figure, which is how many points you are expected to get based on this calculation per money spent. So this is how many points you're expected to get per money spent. Well, I'm not sure if it's hundreds or thousands or millions. Doesn't really matter. It's just that what matters is that the order is correct and that the ratio of expected points per money is correct. So after this, I kind of felt like, okay, if I have all of this, I want to actually be able to use this to calculate what is the optimal team. Because I was able to look like, okay, we have players like Rops who are really good at getting high points for their prize. Same with like a Saiwu. But you can't have all of these players. You can't just have all of the best potential points earners per prize. Which is why I used Excel's solver tool for it to calculate the optimal lineup for me. So first there's a binary 1 or 0 for either being selected into the team or not. And the total has to be 5, because we are picking 5 players. And then there's a selected times money, which is this column times this column. And that has to be total 1,000 or less, because this is in thousands, so 1,000 or less. I did this, and it actually first suggested that I buy 3 vitality players. So I had to do a bit of thinking about, okay, how do I limit it to just 2 players per team? So I made this small table here where we just have the sum of the first 5, like the selected of each, and I had to add a solver rule that this has to be, each of these numbers has to be 2 or lower. And then I let it run. I went to the toilet because it took a while to run. And this is what came out. So it's interesting because before this limitation, I believe it was Apex. There was Mezzi, Spinks. I think it was the same as this, but instead of Carrigan, there was Apex. But now we have selected Carrigan, Mezzi, Spinks, Hobbit, and Boomage. So these are the players that this kind of calculation at least came to see as the best lineup. We can see it here. So it costs 999 as we see here. These are the players. We are doubling up on Vitality with the new guy Mezzi. And then we have Boomage and Hobbit. Oh yeah, I didn't actually remember to talk about this, but okay, let's just go over all of the rules. So highest bookie odds for game 1 bookie. I use the highest bookie odds because bookie odds are always kind of slightly skewed to be better for the bookies because they want to make money. So they are not completely predictive of how much you are expected to earn. or like how high the odds are. So I wanted to use the highest odds, because otherwise it would be skewed in one direction a bit more. It's still probably a bit skewed, but it is what it is. After game on favorites, this one I talked about already. Orange adjusted values mean manual adjustments. I added, for example, just as an example here for Wonderful, because his like ratings are really high right now because he's been farming with Sprout in like tier 2. So this is why adjusting is also nice, because I can do some manual adjustment that make it a bit more fair. And I think we could do the same with like Messi if we wanted to. There's at least some argument to be made. I think less so than with Wonderful. But Messi could be seen as like he was kind of a star player for Fnatic, but then for Vitality he might not have all of the roles, at least straight away. He's coming in for Magisk, and well, we know he's probably not going to be that easy to replace. There are a lot of players like this who you could look at and say that their ratings might be a bit inflated. I think Zaiwu probably isn't gonna, no, I mean Zyphon isn't probably gonna get this high of a rating on average. KDN could get maybe a bit higher, I don't know. There's a lot of these adjustments that you could make, and you can always put them into here and then run it again, and it's gonna calculate what it, at least this thinks is the best lineup for you. Nip drop out of Betboon Daha qualifier. Well, that might impact my lineup. I'm not sure. I can't remember. Either way, yeah, I don't know if I have too much else to say. I think it was just a fun project for me. If you don't know, I am studying economics, so these kinds of models, I've done this kind of modeling for like stocks and trying to choose the best stocks. So felt like, why couldn't I do this? Oh yeah, player points expected to be calculated as half of rating -1. I don't think it's stated anywhere directly how much player points are calculated, but just by my own kind of looking around at how many points people have gotten in different fantasies, I think it might be around this at least. So player points meaning non-role, non-booster, and non-team points. So just from the rating itself. I think that's a pretty fair assessment of how it's probably calculated. Now I understand this is just for this event, because different kinds of formats require different things, but I might be making this for at least some of the bigger events, and especially in the next season. This is why I've kind of felt like I want to have this as like a background. I'm not going to be like, okay, I run this and then I pick the best players and that's all I do. I definitely want to have my own opinions as well. But at least it gives me some kind of idea on what could be the best kind of lineup. Is there something else to say? If you have any kind of comments about this, if you think I've made a mistake, or if you think there's something I could do better, if there's there definitely are things I can do better, but hopefully if you suggest something, it's something that's not too difficult to pull off, because yeah, this is pretty manual labor anyways, especially because I don't know how I could import stats straight out of HLTV, so I have to do things like this by hand for every event, and if there's a lot of teams, I'm not going to be bothered to do that, to be honest. But for some of these bigger events, when I happen to have the time, this was a very fun thought experiment, if nothing else, on how to make a like this. Yeah, without further ado, if you enjoy this kind of content, leave a like and subscribe. I usually make more regular videos about HLTV Fantasy, and I will be making one for this event as well. And hopefully, or well, maybe I will be using some of the tips from this to make some of my decisions. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.